Hello, hello. Here we are back again with the Let's Get Real Canadian Perspectives on Fundraising podcast. This is our first recording of 2026, so it's exciting to be back. And joining us today are Ed Sluga, Ken Ramsey, myself, Lisa McDonald, and we have a special guest, Lois Graveline, who is joining us for some discussion today. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, Happy New Year. So we just had a conversation. Is it too late in the year to say that? Nope. It is. Hope all is well with everyone.
Thank you. We've just gotten hammered by snow again across the province of Ontario. So I think everyone is digging out today a little bit and staying out of very cold temperatures. So it's nice to be here with my mom, wife, boss mug, having a chat. We're covering a few different areas today. So we're going to be talking about a conversation that Ken had with a fundraiser from out west in Alberta that's really looking at things about gift agreements and the situation that fundraisers can find themselves in sometimes with a badly written gift agreement. Lois and I are going to be talking about small shop fundraising, some of the challenges of being in a small shop, her experience working with them, and a new platform that she's kind of put together, and why this is the right time for her to be doing that, and why she feels like this is a great way to spend her time. And then Ed is going to be asking a question, asking whether fundraisers are becoming irrelevant. And hopefully he's giving us an answer to that too. But we will get there when we get there. So this is what we're talking about today. We're very happy that you've joined us. We hope that everyone has had a great restful season of with family over the last few weeks, and now ready to dive back into what's happening in Canadian fundraising with philanthropy and charities. I think we'll just take a quick break and then we're going to get started off. Ken, we're going to get you to lead things off and tell us about this conversation that you had recently. So we'll be back in just a minute. All right, here we are. So we're got 3 segments of conversation going to be happening again, like we do. We're going to lead off with Ken Ramsey today, and Ken, can you just introduce a little bit more about what's on your mind?
Yeah, it's I'm not day-to-day involved in fundraising now, and so, but occasionally I get someone seeks my advice. So I had a call from someone I've known for a few decades, and she's involved with a community foundation in northern Alberta, and it was about a particular situation, and she wanted my advice. So here's the situation. In 2016, there was a very generous donation made to this foundation to set up an endowment to benefit people who need low cost housing. So a very thoughtful and notable gift. The plan was that a nonprofit, but not a charity, a nonprofit would be set up to manage a fund that would work with a municipality to create low-cost housing. And the municipality actually donated 20 acres of land as well. So this was all set up, and the foundation received the gift. A gift agreement was written up with the rough guidelines about the purpose of these funds. There was an initial payment of $400,000 made to initiate this fund. Now, the foundation sought out legal advice. because back in 2016, it was not that clear about how or the rules about giving money to a non-charity, a non-qualified donee, it's called. And however, the first payment of $400,000 was made to the municipality, which is totally okay. That's a crown corporation, so municipal, provincial, federal governments, and a lot of their departments are crown corporations and qualify for very, very beneficial tax benefits if a gift is made to them. So that was fine. Fast forward to now, and this is the conundrum. The donor has contacted the foundation and said, the money isn't going to this nonprofit, and so the foundation said, yeah, but in 2023, CRA clarified this very murky area and said charity can give to nonprofits, that is, but non-charities, but nonprofits, if the charitable benefits are being fulfilled. But the responsibility lies with the charity, in this case, the foundation, to guarantee that money that they were sending to this fund, because, and by the way, the municipality only was involved in the initial setup. They were out of the picture now. And they didn't want to be in the picture. So here we have a donor saying, you've got to send this, and it's about $75,000 a year, has to go to this nonprofit. But the nonprofit would not send any financial records, would not send any records of what they've been doing with the money. So the fundraiser was caught between a donor and her wishes, and this situation where she couldn't legally, technically, send money to this nonprofit. So she wanted my advice. And I said, well, you have to follow the rules. And in this case, you have to ignore the donor. Follow the agreement specifically, which is to benefit low cost, or to provide low cost housing for this city, small city. And so I suggested something like Habitat for Humanity, which would fulfill the general direction of the endowment. And there was, but the foundation and this fundraiser was caught in the middle because they like to be responsive to their donors. This woman, even though she's 86, who'd made the original $2 million gift, she's very strongly opinionated. So it does comment on, first of all, make sure the agreements are thought through absolutely thoroughly. And I know I spoke about that on a previous podcast, because you can get down the road, you can get yourself into these situations. In this case, because there's this added complexity of a non-charity, a non-qualified donee receiving potentially the funds, you have to be very clear. Something like, if the municipality is not willing to forward these funds, then for this purpose, then the foundation has the ability to redirect it to another charity for the same, roughly the same purposes. So they had to avoid getting into this situation. Mm-hmm. But of course, that brought up a much bigger issue for me, which is how do we let this happen? Something, and that was a significant change in 2023. But how many charities know about it? How do we get the word out? Now, if you listen to all of Mark Bloomberg's podcasts, you would have heard about it, but you would have to go seeking that out, right? And then it took me back to 1992, believe it or not. So 1992, we just started CAGP, and I was kind of the spokesperson for planned giving in Canada. And I went to see a woman named Linda Mollenhauer. And Linda headed up the Center for Philanthropy. And the Center for Philanthropy was a spokes group for the industry. And they had a magazine called The Philanthropist. But Linda organized conferences. And, she had me come and speak to in various geographic areas, Plan Giving, the future. We were just introducing it at that time to the wider fundraising community. And I relied on Linda and her team and her position to be a spokesperson. So if there were a significant CRA change, she would have made sure it would have been included in her communication, her conference networks. We don't have that anymore. The Center for Philanthropy, transmuted into the Imagine. But Imagine took a right turn, and they became very, as you know, very research oriented, and it was and has not become the spokesperson for the industry. And we don't have that. We have our organizations we belong to as individuals,
Yeah.
AHP, AFP, CAGP, etc.,
Mhm.
which is fine. But that doesn't speak for the industry. And quite often these kind of universal viewpoints, changes, and that aren't always dealt with. And unless someone writes an article for you, Lisa, no one hears about it across
Well,
the
and the
country.
truth is, our audience is even a very, like we have a substantial audience with Charity E-News, but our audience is even just a segment of the larger one. So
Yeah.
it's a good question, in terms of a sector the size of the nonprofit sector, as how do we help, where are the resources to help, people gain information, make informed decisions, become their professional best. I think before we move on to talking about that kind of a similar situation for small charities in particular, I don't know, Ed or Lois, like any thoughts back to Ken's question of, here's another practical example of someone potentially getting in over their head, not being sure what to do. Like, I don't know, Lois, you're the new person on the panel. Maybe give us a quick shot of what that says to you, or you know
Yeah, I
your knee jerk to that.
sure. Your point can really resonate with me because in my 34 years of being a practicing fundraiser, I have observed the same thing. And oftentimes I look to our professional national association, AFP. Where is that voice? Where is that support? I've always advocated for more support being offered to the leaders of organizations, starting at the board level with AFP. And what are you doing to help us to help us navigate these sector challenges that we're all dealing with, especially the small guys. I often think too about Mark Bloomberg and even Bruce McDonald have mentioned this, that the reality is CRA used to do a road show. And I remember this, I would attend these road shows that they would do and major cities across Canada, but they would go gather charities to give them the lay of the land. Like, this is changing, legislation is changing, here are the updates. And of course that has gone by the wayside due to lack of budget. And I'm mindful of the current stat that was shared with me by Bruce was that around 80% of charities are still submitting hard copy tax filings. And that is roughly a cost of upwards of $2 million for CRA to process, to reinsert this information into their online platforms, to process tax returns for these small charities. They're still sending them in by fax and hard copy in the mail. And there is a real cost to CRA for doing that. And one could argue that if they weren't doing that, where else could they, allocate that 1.8 or $2 million a year? And I think they need to be doing more of this. These legislative changes are happening all the time. And Mark just recently participated in a webinar for a project that I manage. And it was really good, even for me as an old seasoned person, to hear the updates. Like, I want to hear this on an annual basis. And I wish there was one source that we could all go to get that, State of the Union.
Yeah. Ed?
Well, I think everything's been well said. And Ken, I understand this has been something you and I talk regularly about. Some of the notion of this as a profession, and Lois is new. She's already touched upon a little bit of it. I'm just going to say one other thing, which is, there's two sides to this. CRA should be out. The AFP should be out. Absolutely. And I know a lot of this is asked of us as fundraisers out into the marketplace, right? I get that. But the reality is that we as fundraisers ought to be seeking out this information. And it's not uncommon for us to kind of find this fascinating. And I'll give an example. Ken, you and I taught at the Humber College course, and I was the only person, and I'm sure this was the case with you as well. 12-month course, lots of electives, lots of discussion about donor motivations and how to do a social media campaign. I taught tax policy for 1 hour over 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. We don't look at ourselves as part of this big structure beyond, this is the charity I work for. And I'll often say to boards when I'm meeting with them, who's your biggest partner? And they will say, oh, it's this corporation that gives us lots of money, or that's this donor, or it's the hospital that we're the foundation for. No, it's CRA. They're your biggest partner. You pay them no mind. You actually fax them, as Lois says, fax them your tax returns. You make it hard for them to be your partner. We should be better at engaging with our partners. So yes, I think there's lots to go around here. And if you're not on Mark Bloomberg's podcast or on his newsletter, if you're not on Charity E-News, if you're not subscribing to all these blasts and reading them, I know there's lots of them. We send them out. I get it. There's lots of them. But as a professional practitioner, this is part of your job to get better at this. And we'll talk a little bit about that in my segment, but I'm sure also from what I've heard in Lisa and Lois' segment today, which is, this is about being a pro at what you do.
Yeah. And Ken, really good start for us to get the ball rolling. Do you have a closing comment before we break?
Yeah, just something came to mind quickly. I just closed down a business. And so my accountant said, okay, the final return to CRA when you close a business traditionally has to be a hard copy. So we did a hard copy, sent it in. I was fined $1,000 because CRA will not accept hard copy business tax filings. And you know what? That's coming for charities. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to file electronically. I worked in the religious sector for 10 years. My wife does now. And, a great proportion of the 85,000 charities, small ones, tiny, are congregations. And wait till we tell them they have to file electronically. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very compelling note to end on. So thank you for that. We're going to just take a quick break. All right, and here we are back, ready to start again. And this time I'm happy to reintroduce again Lois Graveline. She is the founder and CEO of Harmonia Philanthropy. And we're going to talk in our segment here. We're going to lead off just with the reality of what a lot of fundraising shops look like across Canada. And Lois, can you just kind of take us into the conversation just so with a brief reminder of what the stats are, just in case anyone has forgotten?
Sure, no problem. I have these drilled into my head. I dream about them every night. So, as you all know, 86,000 registered charities, 84,000 nonprofits, roughly. That's about 170,000 different organizations in Canada vying for the support of donors and the attention of donors. About 77% of that 170 is represented by the smaller charities. So 77% raising less than $500,000 a year. 59% are run strictly by volunteers. These are folks who have full-time jobs, and I've worked with them throughout my career. Full-time jobs, they go home at night, they deal with the kids, and when everything else is said and done, that's when they sit down and advance the work of the charity. So very, very mindful. And I spent 25 years myself working in the sector, very intentionally focused on working with smaller charities. I wanted that experience to live through that pain and that opportunity. And I saw it firsthand, how difficult and how highly compromised they are in terms of capacity.
So just again, so we're clear, so everyone is on the same page, we're defining smaller charities, and you're saying 77% of all of those in Canada are raising less than $500,000. So less
Correct.
than $500,000 is being raised by more than 3/4 of the charities in Canada.
And I like, again, I think about that all the time. That reality is stunning, even to someone like us, who, people like us who've been in the sector that long. It's still quite shocking to me. And I know that there's such a shortage on resources to help these charities out.
So let's get real on this for a minute, because
Okay.
so often when the thoughts when people talk about charity, it goes to the large hospitals. We go to the larger brands that we're all familiar with, that work in mental health, that work in animal welfare, that work in hospitals, children's medicine, so on and so forth. I'm sure all of us, if we did a survey, which I won't do right now, but I'm sure we would come up, with the same names, because there are big brand charities that we're all familiar with. But the majority of charities and people who are working in charities are dealing with a much different reality in terms of resources, both in revenue in and in terms of their team size. Can you just give a quick idea, Lois, and in your experience, like what you saw that those challenges would bring to people who were working in those small challenges? And you mentioned about being volunteer run, volunteer dependent, but maybe just expand on that a little bit. And what did you see that really affected you so profoundly?
What I saw, what I experienced myself for 25 years was a team of one, right? Working for a chapter of a national organization. So small charity, no capacity, with the task of raising $1 million plus a year, which seemed absolutely crazy. And I was fortunate, to have accomplished that throughout my years, but it was always myself playing the role of major gift fundraiser, plan giver, the person who fixed the photocopier and took care of the internet when that was down, and identified an office space for us and held meetings, and attended umpteen events and golf tournaments as a team of one. And it wasn't, on this side of that experience, I recognize, and having worked with a number of smaller charities, it's not that they aren't intelligent enough to know that different things have to happen for them to excel and grow and expand their missions. It's the lack of capacity. Like I used to attend a lot of professional development, different sessions and workshops and conferences. And I'll tell you, I already felt behind the eight ball. You know, I was a professional fundraiser, but I already felt behind the eight ball because I was alone and I wasn't able to get to the things. The stewardship side of our business is so critical. I wanted to do more. I knew that was critical to growing the support base. But it wasn't until I attended these professional development opportunities where I would have speakers saying, hey, you guys should be doing more stewardship because it's really important and it helps you move your base and elevate the giving and so on and so forth. I would end up walking away from these sessions feeling like, okay, don't tell me what I should be doing. To me, it was always the missing piece was tell me how I can accomplish that. Like, give me some tangible resources, connect me to a pool of volunteers that will help me with my social media. Like, go that step further and give me the actual implementation tools. If you're talking about cybersecurity, and these days we are, go a step further and direct me to some free tools that me as a small charity can quickly implement, offer to help me implement them, like go that step further. So I think what's been missing in my mind that makes it even more challenging for these charities is don't just tell me what I should be doing, help me with how to make that happen, right? And connect me to these resources and support. Because as a team of one, and especially if I'm a volunteer-led organization, I don't have the luxury of time, and I live that. I knew I needed a CRM, a basic CRM to help me manage my donor base. But God love me, I never had time to research and do the comparative analysis and cost analysis around what CRMs are out there and which one it was that I needed and what was going to take me into the next 5 years. I just didn't have, and I was a staff person, but most 59% are run by volunteers who don't even have the limited capacity I did.
So there are so many areas where this type of working reality can impact, the ability to steward donors, like you said, the ability to build capacity within an office space, the ability to keep up to date on new CRA directives, as we just discussed in Ken's segment, that honestly things just drop off the table because you can only do so much, and this is the day-to-day reality for a lot of charities. Now, Lois, this is you've said you're well over 30 years of working in this sector. This is a time when a lot of people would be looking at stepping down, stepping away, taking a break, spending time with family and traveling the world. And yet, you've kind of decided to double down and try to answer, the need that you're seeing out there. I know you're based particularly in Eastern Ontario around the Greater Ottawa area, but I'm really interested in just the last couple minutes that we have left for you to share kind of what you're trying to do at a time when you could be saying sayonara to the sector and heading for warmer climates, because I find this is often indicative of people who've worked in philanthropy for their whole life, and the fact that they want to keep trying to move that needle. And I know that this initiative that you've been working on is not entirely unique, that there are similar type platforms that are out there. Ed's been involved in one for some time now as well, but I think it's just interesting because you are aimed specifically at this segment of small charities and what you're trying to do. And I'd love just if you can give the listeners a little bit of an outline of how you're trying to take the question from this is a situation and start providing some solutions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I find you're right. I should be thinking about retirement. I'm a grandmother of 3, but I spend a lot of time out on my dock, not in the weather like this, but throughout the summer, I spend a lot of time on my dock where I do my my thinking. And that's the thought that came to my head was, you know, as part of my last swan song, before I retire, hang up my hat, I want to really lean into a possible solution for these small guys. I've got such a heart for these small guys. And so what occurred to me, and what again I experienced myself, is I wish there was one place I could go to as a small charity to find the resources and the support that I need. And you're right, Lisa, those resources that I spoke about that I was missing are out there. But that's part of my challenge as a small charity. I don't have time to go out to 12 different entities out there to get the solutions and to review them. I need someone to do the heavy lifting for me, to do that research, to vet the support that's out there, the different options, technology-wise, cybersecurity-wise, everything else. I need somebody to help me through all of that. And so I reached out to a partner, someone I knew out of Toronto, and talked to them about partnering with me on a crazy idea to come up with, design a portal, a one-stop hub of support for these charities. So we pull in all of those different pieces that are missing from these smaller charities. We have CRA updates, what you need to know about running your small charity. And then we pull in people like Imagine Canada and Mark Bloomberg to add to that. We have everything you need to know about marketing and branding yourself in the social media. We've put together a pool of volunteers to help charities. So these are student volunteers that will come and help these charities implement what we are providing them as tools and resources. We have other sector experts out there who are going to be able to address these needs that these charities have at access points, financial access points that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. So it may not be the end solution, and I recognize and admire others who are out there doing the same thing. This is just my way of addressing a very glaring gap in resources and inequity of resources and access to major donors. I want to shake people up. I want donors to understand that while they may tend to gravitate to large organizations, there is a whole lot of other opportunity with equally impactful and meaningful results, right? Like the missions of some of these charities that I deal with are absolutely incredible. And I don't know about them. I want people, more and more people, to understand that, to help me on this journey of helping these small guys out. And if we can move the needle on that 77%, raising less than 500,000, if we could bring that down even to 72%, 70%, that's a win for Canada and all these communities that rely on these small charities.
That's amazing. I really appreciate you coming and talking and sharing your passion. And obviously, when I heard what you were doing, it definitely engaged my interest. And while we don't, make a habit of providing advertisements for organizations, I will say that your platform name is Project Launchpad, and I'm sure we can add a link to that down in the in the in where we put all the links and things. We will add that in so that people can seek that out and find out more information about it and see if it might be something that could help their organization that they're affiliated with. Ed or Ken, before we kind of wrap up this segment, is there anything that you would just like to say to Lois or to the listeners about this whole idea? Ed, I'll let you.
Well, yeah, first off, I applaud you, Lois, because I think that, what we've seen over our careers, and Ken and I have been at this over 30 years as well. I think Ken's been at it for, I don't know, I won't even guess how many years he's been at it. But anyway,
125.
and the same sort of thing. And I'm going to actually kind of connect what you're doing with what we talked about in Ken's segment, right? Which is there seems to be an abdication. And that's too strong. I think it's kind of a shrugging towards shrugging towards irrelevance for some of the professional organizations out there. Ken started this magical group, right, that became really, really important and focused on the fundraiser. And slowly, it's not as viable. It's actually, you know, I mean, we still have a lot of respect for the CAGP, but it's a lot of financial planners and professionals, and it kind of deals with a lot of that. And the small charity is one that they left behind on purpose many years ago, much to the chagrin, I think, of a lot of those people who founded it. I don't want to speak too much for Ken about this. So it's wonderful people are picking up the mantle. It's a little unfortunate that we're in this moment. I'm going to call it a moment too, that maybe some of the professional organizations aren't focusing on this as much as they could be. And I want to be clear, some of the chapters are doing a great job at the AFP, like doing a tremendous job. I know I have a lot of connection with the Golden Horseshoe chapter, and it's really vibrant and doing tremendous work. And Marla Smith from Golden Horseshoe has been a guest on this podcast as well. So I don't want to throw them all, you know, all the babies out with all the bathwater here. There are lots doing a great job, but it means that folks like you who are passionate about this and want to solve, or be not a solve, because you've even said this isn't about a solve. It's about moving the needle, helping out, being available. Lots of folks are doing that because they feel they have to, and they're looking for leadership in the community of professionals. It's not as clearly accessible, as clearly definable currently. That may change, but until then, thank goodness for folks like you and other groups that are out there doing some of this work. So, you know, and I think more of it will come, and we have to be very careful.
Yeah, I want to say something, and to Lois, and thank you for what you've done and are doing. And it's kind of ignored. We ignore the small charities, right? And if we've run businesses in this industry, we're not going to go to small charities. They don't have any money. I mean, that's just the way business works. However, I want to call your attention to Canada Helps, which I'm sure is, you know all about it. But what they did was create a service for really small charities, and even some medium-sized charities. And this is, I guess, the little undercurrent of a theme running through today, and it's our Prime Minister's speech at Davos, because the message was there: if you're not a top dog, find cooperation with middle dogs or small dogs, right? When you mentioned stewardship, and I love the fact you mentioned it. What if there were a community-wide stewardship department, right? Who could just spend like an hour a week with 30 different charities, right? Like a cooperative models. Because surely that's the answer to raise the level of professionalism and human power, people to do things, share it, get by 1/30 of a stewardship person, right? 1/30 of a major gift officer, 1/30 of a plan giving officer. That kind of a cooperative model. That to me has a lot of relevance, and Canada Helps can take care of all of that technical receipting and all of that stuff. And they're very cooperative, and they don't try to take over the relationship. I've respected the way they've run their organization. So that's my response. Hey, I'm old and I'm retiring, or I'm retired, but I still get excited about some of these things.
Absolutely. And I think, sorry, I'm going to give you the closing word, Lois, in just 1 second. But I do have to say, some of the things I find most compelling, the stories, have to do when charities are able to collaborate and partner together to kind of make some change happen. Like I find that is sometimes when we're at our best is through those partnerships and collaborative endeavors. And I really, again, not to make too strong a point, but again, those with like middle or small power, you gain a lot more when you band together. So I love that analogy, and I love that whole idea of collaboration and partnership. Lois, our final word, 30 seconds.
I just want to pull back the curtain on some of these fabulous, remarkable organizations. And when you think about the stat of 71% of donations coming from 9% of donors who are giving 5,000 and over, there's a lot of room to open some eyes. And that's what Project Launchpad is designed to help with as well, is just pulling back the curtain on what else is out there. And while there's great need in our communities across Canada for the macro level organizations, the large organizations dealing with macro level issues, there is also an equal need for those community on the ground organizations who pay attention to the needs of the community, who are nimble and responsive. So there's room in Canada for both. And I just want more eyes and more attention paid to that smaller cohort. That's 77% of Canada's sector.
Amazing. Thank you, Lois. I really appreciate you coming and joining and sharing that with us. We're going to take our final break, or our next to final break. We have one more segment. Ed's going to talk to us about, are we becoming irrelevant as fundraisers? I hope not. So take a break. We'll come right back, and Ed will lead us into that one. Okay, thanks for sticking with us. You are listening to the Let's Get Real podcast, and we're talking about Canadian perspectives on fundraising. And Ed Sluga is here to take us into our final segment of today's chat. Take it away, Ed.
Well, the idea, and Ken kind of referenced this, and I wanted to talk a little bit about something that happened this past week. We are recording this on January 22nd. We'll be out next week, the first week of February of 2026. And what happened was an interesting speech being done at the Davos World Economic Forum by our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, where he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think I've got it almost exact, which is, be either are at the table or you're on the menu. And Ken referenced it earlier, but the reality of that is that, unless you take on the role of proactively involving yourself in the, as a country, in kind of charting your course, others will tell you what course you're going to take. And how does this relate to us? Some years ago, we had at PG Growth, Ken was part of this, we had a series of webinars around being at the table, being an equal partner. This is what it means. We're not going to be the strongest partner. Canada won't be in the world stage, but we should be an equal partner around the table. That's how fundraisers ought to be. Fundraisers need to be advisors to donors. They're donors. And, fact of the matter is we need to be at the table, or we will be on the menu, or frankly, we'll be excluded from the menu. That for me is a big problem that's going on right now, because we've allowed our for-profit friends to come in and call themselves charitable advisors. When did that happen? I'm not quite sure. I could chart it, but I'm often told to not go down some of these rabbit holes on Let's Get Real. And we will have a good day where I can just let loose. But
are you sure about that, Ed? I'm not sure we're going to ever let you fully let loose.
Yeah.
My point is out there, though, that we have to be proactive. And I get it. Like Lois just told us, numbers are startling. How many folks work for small charities? They feel overwhelmed just getting the annual fund appeal out. just doing the golf tournament. I totally get it. And this is where I think leadership from peers in larger organizations has to come out. Let's face facts. If you're at a large university, if you're at a large hospital foundation, community foundation, you name it, the big player in that community, you as fundraisers have to step up, be at the table, and show that charities are different than banks and financial institutions. Donor advised funds in there, perfect, great, wonderful. But let's not pretend that it's charity. Let's be at that table. If we are not at that table, to use Carney's situation that he's kind of demonstrating, if we're not there taking charge, someone will tell us exactly who we are. And we've talked about this at this group before. If we don't regulate ourselves, if we don't create a profession ourselves, if we don't drive this forward for the large, medium, and the smaller folks, where they really know where they fit, someone is going to define us. And that's actually what's kind of happened. And it's up to us right now to push. I'm going to use the term push back. I'm not going to say elbows up because, frankly, good work is happening. But we cannot allow this to be defined. And it's for us to push out and really ask the question about this. So we need to be at the table, or charities will be on the menu. And I think what Lois said, and we've talked about in previous episodes, is the work that these charities do is extraordinarily important in these communities. Absolutely. They drive the community forward. They make it a good place to live. They make citizens safe, happy, fed, healthy. So we need to be advocates for it. And sometimes the fundraiser is the best advocate. And because they have direct connection with stakeholders in the community, and they make, we help them care about us. And of course, by extension, care for the community, but allow us to do our job in a big, big way. So we've got to be at the table. We're going to be on the menu. We all have to stand up. This is 2026 is the year of charities standing up, small, medium, or large, taking on the mantle of professionalism and saying, we are here, enough of this, we're going to lead the charge. So that's, for me, something, it's a rallying cry, if I may, for 2026. But happy for Ken to pull me down off of my soapbox or whatever. But that's a feeling I have.
Okay, so Ed, I have a new data point for you.
Wonderful.
Yes, I was on LinkedIn this morning.
Yes.
And I noticed something. And that is a certain individual that we know very well, who quite often represents the financial services industry in this exact issue. And he is advertising for a philanthropy relationship person, not a financial services person. He wants to really, it's a stewardship person or a major gift function.
Sure.
And he's advertising it, except it's not your charity. It's not your charity. It's not your charity. So they're actually
bank, right? It's the bank that
they're going one step further, similar to a community foundation. But a community foundation has clear guardrails and definitions, right? This is for anybody. And now it's talk about losing the relationship. You're about to lose it even more because someone's going to be, who works for a bank is going to be strategically working on that relationship.
Lois, you may have discovered what is an area of pain for both Ed and Ken. You may have just gleaned upon that.
Yes. Yes.
So, well, before tangents further happen, do you have any comment for Ed's point?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid one. And often too, I think about the statistic of 8.2% Canada's charitable sector contributes 8.2% of Canada's GDP. That's bigger than some of those large sectors in Canada that we are constantly hearing about, rightfully so, especially with the war on tariffs. But I also advocate, or argue that our government, starting at the top down, should have a sector, our sector represented at the table. And we're not. We're the only, like when you think about 8.2%, it's larger than, I think it was agriculture and transportation sectors. How is it that we don't have a voice around the table when budgets are being developed? And that starts from the top down, in my opinion. I think our government needs to recognize how much we contribute, how viable a sector it is in Canada, and appoint a representative for the sector. In addition to what Ken and with Ed just said, I think it's up to us to take responsibility as well. And so I think those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Lois, I'm going to disagree with you. I think we've always had a seat at the table if we want it. CAGP has been sending government representatives for pre-budget discussions for 30 years. But who represents the charitable sector on our side? You know, who is that? And we don't have anyone. We got CAGP, but that's, as Ed said, that's being controlled and representative of the financial services industry. In other words, the charity sector doesn't have a representative to send to such a budget consideration meeting.
You don't think Imagine Canada would be a viable option?
They might be. They've never stepped forward and offered that, because then they would have to also reach out and get input from the sector.
Yeah.
So it hasn't happened. It sporadically it does. I know CAGP sends someone. There's a government relations committee with CAGP. But
I think Imagine Canada had an event in the fall where they did that. They did convene a group of charities, to do exactly that, to advocate and add a voice. But it is. That's only my opinion, that I feel like our government should take a more proactive role in appointing a minister of the sector and finally having a voice. I mean, there are different people across Canada doing bits and pieces, but I think until the rubber hits the road on that, it's not really going to be a solidified, cohesive plan.
Well, Ed, final words.
Yeah, and
30 seconds.
Just to that point, I'll tell a story. So I'm going to take longer than this. But the important point in this is that the CNIB, when I worked there, because it predated the Canada Health Act, we used to talk about thinking about that person in rural Canada of sitting alone because they've lost their eyesight, right? And the only person to provide them training and therapy around that and give them some assistive devices is coming from the CNIB, because they're not part of the provincial health services. So we used to say, the golf tournament has to do well so that person in rural Canada can get that service. And the government has relied upon that. Every level of government has relied upon that for decades, centuries at this point. So I hear you, Lois, about why isn't the government taking greater accountability? But I understand Ken's point as well. Totally. We've been sending. It's just we have sat back. We haven't we are a very diffuse group, right? 85,000, 100 plus thousand organizations that might raise money. Okay. Whereas the financial sector is concentrated and they're better at acting around this. And so we need to step up and do this. So again, Lisa, I will sum up. Be at the table. Don't be afraid of being at the table. There are lots of ways to learn how to be at the table. Do that, or you will be on the menu. And that's something to absolutely take very seriously as we enter into this year. So we are going to go into our Let's Be Charitable section of the show, where we take a moment to do a shout out to folks doing some great work. Lois, as our newest contributor today, who do you think? Who do you want to be charitable and give a shout out to today?
I'm going to select, I mean, there's so many to choose from. I admire all of their work, but I'm going to choose Orchestra. I was invited to attend their Christmas concert, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Of course,
Orchestra,
yeah, I
but
know who they are.
yeah, yeah, supporting equity deserving kids to enter the world and the magical world of music. And so we were invited to attend their Christmas concert, and it was fantastic. And I mean, age ranging from 5 years old right up to 18. The testimonies, there was a lot of incorporation of personal testimonies of these student musicians. And that was so compelling and profound just to hear how much having access to music has saved them, has kept them from going down the wrong path, has fulfilled them in ways they never thought possible, that social aspect of it. Oh my gosh, if you weren't already in love with this organization, you certainly were after. And they were really good musicians. So shout out to them.
Yeah, that's great. I love it when charities are just doing their jobs really well, and the impact is right in front of you. And some can do it more easily than others. So Orchestra is one of them, but it's really great. How about you, Ken? Let's be charitable. What do you got for us?
Okay, this is a little unusual. There's a lot of Canadian nationalism going on right now and expressions of that. So I've been catching it on YouTube, and there's a lot of these shows that talk about Canadians and what's distinctive about Canadians. And the discovery of insulin came up, right?
Yeah.
And I checked, and November was Diabetes Month, by the way, around the world. The whole world celebrates the focus on supporting people with diabetes in November. So I read into it, and we know that we quite often say it was Banting and Best, but the two gentlemen that received the Nobel Prize was Banting and MacLeod. And MacLeod sort of ran the whole project. Banting was a scientist, and Best was a student who came along, and another guy named Cullip. And the four of them, first of all, identified insulin, and then developed a methodology for producing it and making it serviceable for human beings. Okay, this was 1923. The part of the story that I forgot, and that most of us in Canada forgot, was the gift, because they had to develop this, and it was patentable, that procedure of isolating and purifying this life-giving protein. And they gave it as a gift to the University of Toronto for $1. For $1, and with the provision that it be made available to anyone forever in the entire world, so it could be replicated, and there would be a supply of insulin for the entire world. And that's over 100 years ago. And that gift really, it hit me as a gift, the gift part of that story. So there it is.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about young people who are getting into the sector. I know that we can be, and we've all got lots of experience here, and sometimes, and even some of the folks around our table at PG Growth get a bit grumpy about some of the young folks coming in to the sector. But I'm so happy to see young people finding their way here, and there continues to be a lot of them. I'm doing a presentation in a few weeks to a group that are really interested in getting better professional designation and learning more. And I think these are really incredible people that we need to, as senior professionals, look to. They're the ones who are coming in. And I think sometimes a lot of this is a lot of what we do is talk about what we're lacking. Let's talk about what we have abundance of. And there are young people. I think wanting to come in rather than, I know you and I and fell into this work. Lois, I'm not sure about you, but we fell into it. A lot of folks we know fell into it. I think there are a lot of young people coming to it because they want to, which I find really incredible. So I want to be charitable to that group. Sometimes we're not as charitable as we can be. So for me, that's an important group to call out and say thank you to.
And I'm going to just extend that a little bit further, that idea of gratitude and the fact that, sometimes in our let's be real comments, we're sometimes hard on organizations. And today, CAGP took a hit. We also talked about
it's a regular thing with us, though.
I know. So I'm giving some balance to the teeter totter, the Association of Fundraising Professionals was also mentioned. But in light of us talking about resources available to us as a sector, I just want to give a shout out to a few more out there. So it's not restricted to those two. There are many different organizations who are working within their domains to try to further understanding resources and knowledge out there. I'm going to mention the AHP, the Association for Healthcare Philanthropy. I'm going to mention APRA Canada, the Association of Prospect Researchers. We do often talk about Imagine Canada, Canada Helps. I'm also going to talk about CINDR, the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Digital Reliance. It's another organization that is really working to further our understanding of our digital resources and, of course, of AI. So that's just a shout out to a few more of the organizations, the leaders who are trying to extend the capacity of our sector, all trying to move in the same way. Is there area for improvement? 100%. And, that's what we're kind of digging down into often in our conversations. But, there are people out there working to make a difference to further that. So let's be charitable to them as well.
Agreed.
It's been another great conversation. Thank you, Lois, for joining the table. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ed. It's wonderful to be back in this crazy time, this 2026. There's never a dull moment. We appreciate our listeners who've joined us and stuck with us through perhaps another longer version of our podcast today, but we have lots of good things to talk about. So we wish you a great rest of the week. You've been listening to Let's Get Real, Canadian Perspectives in Fundraising. We couldn't do it without our producer, Jody Barron-Sluga, who takes all of our raw material and hopefully makes us sound wildly smoother than we do as we are recording. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And until next time.